Hello, America. I'm not a licensed journalist. I'm not a lawyer. This is an affidavit. This is the whole truth. Nothing but the truth. So help me God. Variable. God variable is needed to be discerned. Nature shows us as a scientific value for how nature shows us how reason works, how how it can be used to answer our questions. The identity that is nature, that is not us, but is us. Anyway, and hyper additionally, well, as us, is coming to, from, as, with, and for all things, and for boxings, one way, many pray, boxings. That is a generation of all the grouped ways. See, nature uses how we are individuals finite, and how the species volume is an individual finite, and how group difference slash S, we're all about this and about hyper additional nature as its own. Nature shows us more than just more practical and more probable that its identity of relationship to itself, and the increasing value of that, then generated physical matter. And every physical identity that is generated first has has its identity conceived. In other words, the identity of the physics of what a verb is. That's why we need more than one name for a verb. That's why we need seven names for a verb. And appreciation of that is appreciation of how there are one slash three slash five identities of exception and exception nature, and demonstration of the one. Hyper simultaneous, that is, not juxtaposed with the finite, active, progressive, but that one way. And we could ignore its system, only increasingly value. Hypernative pure, but it will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. As a human factory nature breaching method knew nature would demonstrate. And this came from before modern religions. This came in semi ancient times. And then by semi ancient times, it had already forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded and sustained roles with it and uses of that, blaming other things, others ourselves, for what the breaching method caused, while simultaneously using the names of humanity A through Z, of differences A through Z, tactical terror from how they wanted to and needed to, people A through Z, because we were forced, tricked, hurt, and pursued. Humanity was volume science. Humanity's names were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded by a trans transnational archetypal criminal enterprise that realized it was going to get caught. So it forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. It turned it decided to be it designed a way to become a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise before it could get caught. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded people to blame other things, others, or selves for things it caused and did, and then to defend that, and it increased needs for them to do that, not realizing that more and more that they were incapable of allowing any short person to have short words. appreciate what nature is actually capable of demonstrating to us at each age of correlation nature, assigned with natural difference slash S to communicate tactical terror from how we are being forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to entertain, communicate for ourselves and others. They have been attaching little kids and their family members to fake words and transcripts into databases since before we were born. All investigators are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically and hyper tactically, criminally foreign influenced. Before there was a civil war, I digress. But before there was a civil war, they had to be forced to be sides to fight against slavery, both the North and the South. Forth, forth north, through the clouds and so forth, boxings. You will understand this. There were no sides, and where there were sides, there were forced to be. In other words, they were all enslaved by the breaching method. Like before, that was entrenched here and designed the suburbs before America's founders were born. This has been obfuscated slash hyper obfuscated through American campuses and through the differences of them since before we were born. And that this breaching method consciously maintains that countries A through Z. The negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures this causes in demonstration of it. Instead, in fact, effectively blamed on other things, others ourselves. Effectively self-cultivated role screening that for the breaching method through ourselves that is done. Boxing is fun one way. Many pray, species bodies might. Even if we all agree in self-value agreements. If we're not going by nature's system, see it uses positive. How it is five distinct identities of positive, for example, as time, as the value of what really was truth as itself. That came first. For example, the value of sequence, truth. It is the increasing value of Native Americans and of colonists as two volumes that had already been sustained through systems tactical terror, then educational systems and memory that every member of those groups wanted. We know that because we are this human's volume science, black pupils. How has this been left out from this conversation so long? So there are extraterritorial influences and roles, needs for humanity to use words like criminal foreign influences and hyper for criminal foreign influence. See, but this breaching method, again, it knew that humanity would have to use phrases like criminal foreign influences and hyper criminal foreign influences. Forgiveness is not to give up against the breaching method, inseparable from our own conversations with ourselves at countries A through Z. They never had an identity, see suits and ties. Russia, America, and China. Were identities from our countries. Here, before our founders were born, here and there. They had been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be uses of our names, A through Z. Till use tactical terror from how nature wanted and needs us to use this. Use tactical terror from what could defend that and afford discern with our founders here and there. Communicated which is greater than what they said. And we know this partially because we know this system is not nature's. See, everyone missed the involvements of hypercriminal foreign influences. How about there are only three branches of government? And so everyone misses the involvements of how to counter criminal foreign influences, let alone, there's a breaching method there too that can be used to show needs to syntactically counter a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, even if it is only roles with that manifest because of this breaching method. In other words, they had laws against everyone that were torture, extortion, and slavery simultaneously, distinctly, non distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. See, there is that identity that is its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, which is why and is how the other species' bodies have two eyes. They have quality aspects in nature and consciousness that is better than akin to our own, is a part of and as that which invented that which is not us or them, not invented, and revealed that its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that only increasing is what the languages were revealed to teach together. But it is more probable and is demonstrable. It is increasingly there were demonstrable demonstrations. It was more probable that before the Legion ever made moves, it consciously knew it was with the part tribes and part exceptions, and everything is exception nature. But it not only is it that portion of positive as what actually was true first, and relative to it self as the relativity. There's hyper relativity and relativity. See, the questions asked at cases, legal cases, civil and criminal, through time already, and the names at the courts, and the names of the police forms and their sources. They were already shown they need to hide life aggressions. Now, forgiveness is also so they don't pretend we're attacking people and changing what we say. That has been done on a mass scale. So, like when in the parties, individuals like presidents, noted as president slash chief, and they are still maintained as incompatible volumes as the cells of a body that are inseparable. They're only incompatible because we're not being led by that shared identity of hyperrelativity. It is hyper invisible but still discernible. It is what we are appreciating when we appreciate the seven names of the verb. Why and how it needs more than one. Why and how any subject we could, or subjects plural, that we could slash subject slash s. Still, it has slash more coming in. And anything we could make individually grouped and together. Even if Earth is wiped out because humanity, for example, has too long been systems tactical ulterior from what it is with positive and negative. As uses of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, syntactically, therefore functionally. Is before computers, the database relativity at other locations. And everyone already was collusion slash S. And the difference of that is also exploited and also relatively, individual ways, group ways. So there was a time, there's a quality of fact keeping nature at all formal legal locations that is maintained, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, rob, victim predators, hyper victim, hyper predator. Bravo Network has Trantolo and Trantolo who have ads on their network. They have roles. They are recorded capacity. Connecticut courts and police forums, and former director of the FBI Robert Luskin, his lawyer Robert Chevrolet, and co-defendants of his. And no, he was warned not to not go before the court without a lawyer if he ever came there. In a 2006 district court case that came about after it was proven in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the attack. From inside the court, people had colluded to post date legal papers from inside the court. There are also people involved with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases interstates through time and internationally. These are families involved with like psychiatry tied to prisons, on off the state corrections offices. Our names involved with wire crimes with Weathersfield police, home break-ins through time, roles with foreign and domestic military families, roles with the World Trade Center, roles on off the state judicial branch offices, conjunctions to it and to that, federal evidence is crimes, federal rules of evidence is crimes, identity, natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, wire crimes with Weathersfield police, switching names, forging names with foreign and domestic interstate state police families. There's a Phil Cololo involved with a Bob Chase, who's one of the ones inter social media with the FBI director Robert Luskin, and other people involved with Mr. Abruzzi, with kids involved with their families with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and foreign and domestic medical families, putting kids that never had classes together to fake locations and fake ties to each other and fake natures of ties to each other and to themselves as doctors. Ones involved with the whole extended family members of judges involved with them also speaking fake things in records. Roles with crime scenes increasingly, body dumping spots. The body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, reported by the media, two different places, and by and people by family, more than one finds a family involved with a whole bunch of names on off Two Rod Highway and on off Hangdog Lane, Two Rod Highway / Hangdog Lane in their conjunctions, like the Brown Turnpike and Route 3, which is in conjunctions to that, which is the state judicial branch office increasingly rolls intercities with names planting evidences tied to that. Weathersfield Pizza has a Steven Stocco and a Maria Stocco and a whole bunch of boyfriends associated with her, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties to me, fake nature ties to me. Try to make fake exceptions too for other people. In other words, these are people also involved with the FBI, Robert Luskin, but there's other FBI with the name Ian, involved further on Twitter with the principal upskirt nature, who I caught with other natures of organized crime roles and names involved. 3 times people from Hartford Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with names on off the state, on off Weathersfield Community Center, and on off my street involved with Dylan, Kevin Dillon, Anna Dillon / Annie Dillon. How she changes that. These are people involved with court switching and forging names, KKK themed and black themed, even black white female judges refusing to put writing, and they're switching names roles with the women that work with the court still. More than when she made a mistake with her name, Courtney. Then that's the context where the principal child abuser was being forced. Mr. Bean. He brought up the name Mike Levine, who's also involved with people all along Route 3 through time. Out of Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, increasingly involved with names with predicate acts and natures of organized crime on my street, and natures of time, identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences. These are people involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and it's nothing personal. These are people that do a game where they leave the foreign bodies out. They have roles with Koreans. They have roles with Italians. They have roles with psychiatry. Criminals against their own people. Ours against our own. Fake traitors as their suits and ties. Counters to them. Exceptions as collusions. First part of the Old Testament, first part of the Quran. It says they both have parts. It says this is the only part that is matters. And like the first part of the Old Testament says the names of the people of the sciences will come together. This is the only part that you have to defend, and the part that comes before it. No one even knows about that. You guys are roles collusions with the people, countering those books too, and it's manifest on off the spots in West Hartford. There are a whole bunch of people tied to that, to predicate acts, wire crimes with Weatherfield police on my street, and people tied to them who have roles with those West Hartford locations and a whole bunch of names on Central Connecticut State University, leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context, these are people sick as reason experts, types of experts, with the campuses of New York City too, as the ones involved. These are male and female with the military next to the state of Connecticut capital too. So through time, a whole bunch of people have been sequence shifting and building on that and building on predicate acts with facts. At every campus I went to, there were connections between those people made. People with Central Connecticut State University has names that confessed. I never saw Ray Reynolds on Central Connecticut State University in my life. I don't think I've ever seen um, Mike Pandolf there either. He was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by a Chris Walters and by a teacher that begged me to. He lied to me too. Begged me to take his class. These are people involved with Luigi Guerrero and other people. I don't know his sister's names and things like that. People tied to a Jonathan Maiano interstate with putting predicate acts with facts in databases. His roles through sequence shifts and federal evidences crimes, natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles with the child abusers on and off the campuses. These are police forms these are not legitimate people training, what they call training or what they have to do. These suburbs were designed before our founders were born. How to stop the killing in Israel, follow mandated law for the principal child abusers campus, and the other ones brought up. Whiting forensics is also through a time with the Witness Protection Program. Also, there was a Community Services Act on Bravo Network by a police chief, Centron. There's also a modern pastry and that had a worker for them who has crimes against them and against me, sickly distinctly, with name Mayano. I just found that out not too long ago. That's why, because that name kept coming. There's a Fred Grouset. He's one of the ones interstates with the police chief Centron and the FBI and other agencies that they have involved with confessions also on Facebook and confirmations on Facebook. There are real life confessions about the roles with the Dillon guy and people on off the state judicial branch offices and with the houses next to it. These are also people involved with the World Trade Center were used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. And their roles has something to do with their roles with parks and fields and their roles with planting evidences method /S, which I figured out and we all could observe. but you have to follow mandated law. So they have a criminally foreign influence readings of statutes with a lawyer of a police chief Sintram involved with Russians, reportedly Russians. Because there's one named Thomas Peruta, who's one of the ones who was in my sixth grade class, who was involved with the people in my fifth grade class and fourth grade class, also with body dumping spots and with the witness protection program involved and Central Connecticut State University. And little people who did little tricks with mayors. Mayors are increasingly involved with people, all sides with the World Trade Center attack and the counters to it as collusions. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them about that. These are CNN sources on off Central Connecticut State University, males and females with the military and with intelligence, not just the interbranch, and their roles with like stripping a stripper location next to the airport in East Hartford, and people with the name Scalora are involved off the World Trade Center, the court next to it, and other spots next to the World Trade Center with the people with the name Tomorrow, who also has confessions and demonstration predicate acts with the co-defendants and neighbors of the co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. And one of them is a neighbor capacity next to Fox Connecticut News, where he was working or pretending to work in the booth with the parking garage around the corner in between Fox News and the Russian lady, for example. And they changed that name different places, and it's also the places on the other side and all sides, and that's not far. That's right next to the Capitol. No, and this is also where many times Johnny Duke said that he was a bootblack there with Willie Pep on Main Street, which is where the immigration was. Now they call it Homeland Security. Those differences, name switches. So you guys left out the identity theft, fraud, slander method that things like readings of the law, criminally foreign influence, leaving out exceptions, leaving out exception nature, leaving out those collusions our founders told us not to leave out, told us to get the Constitution unabridged, told us to address the torture, extortion, and slavery method roles. All formal standing locations already had. It was an entrenchment, a breaching method entrenched before the foundation of modern nations A through Z. More finite, more deep, more vast. And then as their foundations, more sophisticated than what they would allow while pretending other, while fishing for roles and natures with uses of criminal insidious natures of positive and negatives inclusion. Slash S, not just to screen, therefore way worse when screening are. So the breaching method, its identity of relationship to itself, to ourselves, and the only increasing value of that to our discernment. Per its relativity to the word unabridged, the word slash value, and the value slash word, as hypervolume science shows us, as ancients appreciate before the sciences, therefore the names of humanity, in defense of themselves, whatever. See, the motivations to counter criminal foreign influences, right, let alone hypercriminal foreign influences, motivations are not relative. You have to follow the predicate acts. So Weathersfield Police, a whole bunch of people that work at Hartford Hospital have roles with predicate acts on people's areas with a whole bunch of names tied to themselves, planting evidences. Roles with only three branches of government People with the name O'Brien also involved with Sandy Hook names with this and all sides of cases. They have victims and victims advocates. The courts are still tactically delusions wrought too. Again, black pupils. So we have to get them on paper, one name in sequence. They had a whole bunch of different police reports falsified and rolls with uses of confessions relative intercities because the intelligence community uses crime methods intercities and their roles with different natures of organized crime actually, where and how the breaching method employed, you know, readings of statutes like they can hide they can get away with evil things because it's too expensive for them to go to court. But they're left out exceptions with these readings of statutes, which CNN did good reporting on that. On off Paul Manafort Drive on CCSU, Central Connecticut State University, and all sides of that campus, including people from Ukraine and Russia. They have collusions that were made for them with our own and with the people from Asian countries, with the people like Korea. South Korea has roles with psychiatry, and whether they realize it or not, and the names involved with them, also pilots, people involved with the name Delafera, involved with the intelligence community, with judges, involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, putting fake transcripts in databases, roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases, including with overt criminal enterprises and private ones originally and still. We have uses of words like value and economic treatments. New York City's in tortured sickly distinctly, extorted and enslaved sickly distinctly from the people of the suburbs. Therefore, again, our founders left us. George Washington, for example, we were supposed to treat honestly, obviously, to get the Constitution unabridged, how he was extorted and tortured, in fact, human nature enslaved. And if he tried to do it beyond an extent, counter it, they would sense that person, that body, even if it was in a group, and they would adapt to it because they already had done this to all groupings of humanity too, because they understood how nature communicates, individual, grouped, different slash essence as its own, species volume as its own. Again, we could be systems other than its own, only increasing value its own. But it will force our special difference from here, least of high D's. And that's Earth's special difference, our own too. And we are only one little species. That's why it took so long. See, that's why we're going to have Earth environmental problem. No one thinks about zero gravity. No one is honest when they speak about money because their motivations were set up by the breaching method too. Because we could afford way better. And you can't measure. We have to be led by the hyper invisible. It's still discernible because they had to begin with all economics and all syntax associated, entertained, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to be that, leaving out exception nature, as nature communicates with it. For example, which is simultaneously valuing a special difference to understand and to teach about this. Had we appreciated a special difference, we would have appreciated how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. So we have to have mandated law followed. Weathersfield police have wire crime acts and methods. They lie about their motivations too, simply distinctly from the other cities' police departments that are involved with the same house with predicate acts with them and names tied to them. I would follow Mandate Law before I keep writing more. You guys bringing it up. You guys put me in fake conversations with WFSB about the World Trade Center with the intelligence next to you guys too. These are also intelligence next to WFSB, next to WTNH. WTNH did stories in Weathersfield at corners of streets with people who have predicate acts with facts and roles with crime scenes with them, including before enforcing child offenders, leaders of kids. But they have other natures of organized crime roles and with the names with the intelligence families, not legitimately. Well, that's just how it is. Of course, the what they call states' rights, they use it to hide criminal foreign influence slash hyper criminal foreign influences. And we could discern this. The first of three times I was forced for a mental evaluation, I forced them to call the police without telling them why the first time. The other two times they knew, realized they were in trouble. So they made rape threats, and I had my mother call the police again. I made her do it, and not telling her why the first time violently. Then the second time they made it up, in other words, two times. Then one time they just came because they're having people calling in fake things at Hartford Hospital, and they haven't responded to the first time yet. They're stacking names. They also use the crime method. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They use the crime method of pretending that everyone's evil on a mass scale. The first only for only like 3 days I was there. They forced me there. The first time they charged like 20, 30,000. There are only 300 something streets in Hartford, Connecticut. You're gonna, in other words, these people are charging every day. These people have roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, also with the names next to them through time. A Demoral's Market and an Aiello's Kitchen have roles of wire crimes and home break-ins per Joe Demorrow and other things with chemicals and pouring salt and soil and things like that, and interreligious things with the people further involved with medical offenders with the kids and guns crimes while they're pretending to be against such. Way worse with the ones with Aiello involved with the spots next to Johnny Duke's house still on Zion Street, no, on next to Trinity College, and they have roles with the fire department families with identity theft, fraud, slanders. I figured out why and how. They have roles with Russians. It must be having to do with the nuclear fakes. So they're not trying to hide this. And there's a Paul Kelly also as one of the many names involved with ones at Hartford Hospital who put fake transcripts into databases. And that's how they use investigators remotely, including the judges and prosecutors, police can bake things in databases and planting evidences with their family members. Has something to do with their roles with malls and shopping centers too, corners of streets, corners of buildings used too. These are people increasingly involved with corners with various natures of organized crime near me, timed identity theft, fraud, slanders, natures of instances, and corners of street uses as the people involved, with more World Trade Center predicate acts and the principal child abuser at the same time, murders that were brought up, intercities. And so the police forms are switching names, forging names, and telling lies about me in background to hide what came first. They're, 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 they're telling the news to pretend presidents are attacked and stuff like that when there's not even elections going on. The readings of laws where people can lie. They're currently they're leaving out exception nature, where they have the rights for candidates to lie against each other. They were applying those lies, timed uses of them when someone's going to walk by them, pretend they know each other. There were people that approached me and asked me questions at near my science classes when I came on a bus sometimes. Like I was one of the women involved with the I don't know that. She's involved foreign and domestic military, people with the name Oliveri, involved at the corner of Route 3. And I forgot the name of that street. But it's not far from the state judicial branch offices. And Weathersfield Pizza has rules with Weathersfield police. They called me and confessed this. Now, I don't know what they want, what they're calling it, but I'm calling it a confession. There's a whole bunch of people tied to it, to them also with this, and their neighbors are involved with it. Brian Bonin and others, like with the name Tomorrow, that were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's people with the name McCord they involved. I never asked them about the McCords. I don't know, never had personally with the all along Route 3. And